I just had spicy Cheetos, the ones with the lime in them, and they're so good, but my tongue is on fire right now. I should not have done that before a video. What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here, and welcome back to today's video. I should not have had hot Cheetos before a video, Jesus Christ. Today we're going to be discussing the horror games that changed us. Ignore my face if I make weird noises because, spicy. But this video sure is going to be entertaining and horrifying, perfectly on topic. You know how you just love spicy food? You love spicy food, but then you just regret it a few moments later. And it's like, I love kimchi. I love spicy kimchi. But whenever I have it, I instantly regret it later, even though I absolutely love it. That on top of ramen with like a soft-boiled egg on top. Oh my god, it's so good. I could literally talk about food all day, but we're here to talk about horror games, okay? I feel like there are two groups of people whenever we were growing up. I mean, for me, I was, born in the 90s and I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s. So when I was a kid, I played a lot of different types of horror games. So did some of my friends growing up when I was homeschooled. And there were other groups of people who just did not play horror games, or they were just too scared to play horror games. For the purposes of today's video, we're going to be talking about those who were either A, surrounded with horror games and were just, desensitized to them from seeing their brothers, sisters, cousins, whoever was play them. And we're going to talk about those like me who played horror games non-stop, saw horror movies, all this kind of stuff when we were younger. And it's just, we've become desensitized to it as a result. Now, of course, I can only go from what I've been exposed to myself. I don't know about you guys, especially because I don't know you. Now, when it comes to horror games, for myself at least, the more psychologically grueling, the better. You're gonna think, Ariel, that is kind of messed up. I know. But for me, it's so interesting to see someone's mental state, to see where someone is at point A and then where they are at point D. It's probably why I majored in psychology. It's probably why the brain fascinates me so much, because those who are exposed long-term to something will get desensitized to it. They will become desensitized and they will show kind of more of a liking to it to an extent. Back in the day when I was, I think it was either 10 or 11 years old, I played my first horror game for the very first time, Resident Evil Remake. It was just way back in the days of where horror was growing. It was maturing. It was developing into what we know today with the Callisto Protocol, Evil Within, Outlast, all these different types of games. And I feel as if horror has to reimagine itself so tremendously, or people are still going to be desensitized to it. Now, back when Resident Evil 1 came out, I'm talking about the one in 1996, we look at it now as basically like, oh, you're so adorable with all your different colors and, potato-esque pixels. It's so endearing and it's so, I want to say adorable, to say the least, because when we see that game today, we don't see horrifying. But back in the day when we were just little kids playing that game, we saw something that was terrifying. We heard the different noises. We heard the creaks. We heard the different, sounds and ambiances and everything like that. That's what happens when your brain is adjusting to something for the very first time. It doesn't expect anything, so it goes in with different preconceived imaginings and notions. Now, when you are playing something for the first time and you're not expecting anything, or you don't already have a potential bias going into a game, you're going in with a tabula rasa. You're going in with just a blank sheet. And that's the part of where the beginning of desensitization takes place. So you have your first experience and then you're like, oh, I like this said thing. So I'm going to go and I'm going to have another experience of said thing. You have several experiences and down the road, you're like, where's a new experience? Where's the next high? Where's the next point of interest of where I can get as intrigued and as excited about this thing as I was when I first played it and experienced it? Because when it is kind of like whenever you're, you have that first experience of something and you want to be able to have that same experience again, but that's impossible. It's why I love the Callisto Protocol so much, because when we look at horror games, we see jump scare, blood, gore, thrash and bash and everything. For me personally, when I was in the game, as you guys saw during my playthrough, I had to skip a lot of the death scenes because they were even too gruesome for me. And I never skip gruesome death scenes. I'm like, yeah, the more gore, the better. I love the Saw movies. I love being able to see just different kinds of stuff that I can't really mention on YouTube right now, but different horror movies, horror games. I love it all. Besides one, and we'll get into it in a second. And I was so shocked. I was like, whoa, I actually have to skip some of these scenes. I have to, kind of take that away from my brain because it was just a little bit too much and a little bit too gruesome for my liking. And there is a difference between something being too gruesome and something that is being edgy for edgy's sake. And for me, that is Martha is Dead. A lot of you probably remember the chaos that ensued whenever we heard of the game Martha is Dead, from that one scene of where you have to remove a person's face. There is a indicative difference, like I said before, where you are being gruesome and adding gore to a game because it actually calls for the gore, it calls for the chaos, it calls for a lot of the stuff that is actually in there, and it is something that is viable to the story and what the monsters do, right? There's a difference between that and being edgy and gory for just that sake. You know, there's no educational purpose in it. There's no, story purpose to it. There's just gruesome for gruesome, and I'm not a fan of that. When things start to take it too far, I also have an issue because we as players have become so desensitized to horror. A lot of us who have become desensitized to horror always want that envelope to be pushed. And I feel like that was a point of where, as a gaming community, we've reached a little bit too far of where anything goes, and that's not good. We can't have a situation of where anything goes because we are still human beings. We still have functioning brains that need to process certain things, and being able to process things accordingly by saying, no, this isn't reality, this is a video game, it kind of blurs that line. So when we look at, even though it's a cutscene in a dream sequence, and we look at someone, like, you have to do the controls of where you're actually cutting off a person's face. Doing that action is very detrimental, I think, to the mental hygiene of a person. And also, it's extraordinarily violent. Like, I'm sorry, there are certain parts of a video game of where it's acceptable horror and I don't want to sound like a purist or anything like that, but when it comes to horror games, there are certain things that you can do and that are appropriate for the horror game that doesn't affect the person's mental hygiene. Or maybe, playing devil's advocate here, maybe that's just my desensitization coming in and speaking, just, because I want to have that acceptance for different types of horror. But there should be certain limits, I feel. Like, we don't want to have the envelope pushed in a negative way. We want it to be pushed in a way that makes us think, that makes us love horror games again, because I feel like there's been so many horror games. There's been so many different ideas that have been just churned out all the time. And it's just the same thing over and over again, to a point of where we don't even get jump scared a lot of the time. Unless it's like really well done, I don't get jump scared. Like The Devil in Me, that was my first experience of being jump scared in a very long time. But you guys, I hope you guys, got something out of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's really interesting to be able to have these discussion pieces with you guys and hear your, I should say read your comments, not hear your comments, to read your comments and to see, where your guys' train of thought is and how you guys perceive these different types of topics. So let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are and what you guys think of horror games. Are you guys a fan of them? Do you guys play them regularly? Are you guys horror aficionados like myself, of where you will literally grab onto any different type of horror game, whether that be AAA or indie? But if you guys like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. I make videos every day here on YouTube. May you find your worth in the waking world, dear hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Umbasa.